Well, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Virginia's Realtors. I'm pleased to be joined today by Brittany Dixon, Realtor Superstar with Keller Williams Capital Properties. Brittany, how are you today?
I'm good, and thank you so much for the introduction, Tanner.
You bet, you bet. Well, we're going to go into your backstory a little bit to start it off, and you are moving some business right now, and we're going to talk about your licensing in different states and all of it. But let's go ahead and give the folks, we like to call it the origin story. So we all come from somewhere in this business. So fill me in. So what's kind of your background before getting into real estate?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess to back it up, I started in college going through Air Force ROTC to get college paid for. And so after graduating from Kansas State University, I joined the Air Force and was in for almost 8 years. And served down at Eglin Air Force Base in Florida, doing program management type work with Lockheed Martin and some of the bigger contractors out there. And then after that assignment, eventually transitioned to the intelligence community and did an assignment out at Beale Air Force Base near Sacramento, California, and really did more intel operations and supporting enlisted troops and getting products out to people deployed. And then I ended up getting medically retired. I randomly developed asthma halfway through my career. And because of that, got medically retired. And it kind of threw me off because I wasn't sure if I wanted to stay in, for 20 years or kind of what I wanted to do. So it forced my hand, which at the end of the day, I'm kind of glad. I wasn't super passionate about the work I was doing in the military. I met a lot of great people, but just didn't feel that strong passion for it.
Yeah.
And then when I found out the news that I was getting medically retired, I basically had 2 months before I had to get out of the Air Force. And we had to do weekend shift work and whatnot. And one of the guys that had recently gotten out of the military that I worked with was back on reserve duty. And so we were just kind of shooting the breeze, and I was asking him what he was getting into now that he was out and what he was up to. And he basically told me he got into real estate. He was super pumped about it, got me really excited about it. He was definitely drinking the Kool-Aid, and he was like, you need to join me, get your license out here in California, come join me in Sacramento, it'll be great. And I was like, okay, hold up, that's nice and all, but you have a wife supporting you. I'm single. I don't feel so comfortable going into a career where it's just straight commissions, and I haven't really kind of planned or prepped for it. And so I was like, I'm definitely interested. I just want to pause this conversation. I'm not sure that California is really where I see myself long term. So when I got out, kind of did that networking thing and connected with some friends that got out of the military and came out to DC, and were working in consulting firms for the government and stuff like that. And so I got a job with Deloitte. So that's basically what brought me out to DC initially. And it was just kind of I would say a holdover, because I was still doing very similar work that I was doing in the military, but I didn't quite know yet what I wanted to do long term. But it was easy to get a good paying job and not have to retrain and redevelop skills and stuff. So I just went that route. And then while I was here, within the first year of living here, I bought my first house. And when I initially talked to the agent and everything, and we were going through the offer process and everything, I just didn't feel like I had great representation, but I also didn't know any better. But when it came this market in DC, especially even pre-pandemic and to now, compared to I think a lot of other markets in the US, it's consistently competitive. It kind of depends on what market you're looking in, but when I was looking back in 2016 and 17, the DC condo market was really hot, and it's definitely transitioned since then to more single family homes and townhomes are what's hot. But I was getting into bidding wars, and I would tell my agent oh, I want to put an offer in on this place. And he would be like, okay, what kind of offer do you want to put in? And I'm like, I don't know,
The
like
one that wins.
and so I would just be Googling like my own strategies and coming up with like my own strategies, adding on each time to see if I could do something a little more to get the winning offer that time. And I got beat out every single time. And I was looking mainly in DC. And then
Okay.
I decided, I want to refocus and look in Old Town Alexandria, because after living in DC for a year, I realized like a lot of my friends and where I spent most of my time was in Alexandria. And so I was like, this makes more sense, I think, and ended up getting my first offer accepted, like didn't have to go through any sort of like bidding war and stuff. So like, I say that because as much as that sucked to like suffer through so many losses, I think I ended up at the right place, and I'm very happy with the house I ended up in. But it was very eye-opening because, I went back to that conversation with my friend Jason on real estate, and I was like, you know what? I feel like veterans need more education and support when it comes to buying. And I really wish like I would have known more about the VA loan. Even like when I was in the military and moving around, I would have bought a property at every base that I went to,
Yeah.
and been building my real estate portfolio. But in my head, I had this idea that it was really hard. And even though, the VA loan has zero down payment, in my head, I still had this idea that I had to bring all this money to the table. And I just didn't feel like I was financially ready or anything. And I just wish I would have talked to resources a lot sooner. And so that just got me really passionate about real estate and wanting to help other veterans not lose out on this benefit and get started on the home buying process earlier, because it's a huge wealth building tool for military, because
Yeah.
you have a fixed income when you're in the military, and it's not the best income. I think military are significantly underpaid, but it's a great way to start building your wealth and growing it, in my opinion.
Oh,
And
for
so,
sure. I mean, like my daughter is active duty right now at Fort, soon to be Bragg again, if it's not already. And
I
both
know, I was like, Fort Liberty, Fort Bragg,
right.
what are we?
She and her husband are both active duty, so they bought their first house, and I've been trying to explain to them how, like, if I was to do it over, I would have 4 properties using their entitlement on each route, and here's how you build it.
Yep.
And then if you do stay in 20 years, you have them almost paid off. And I have a friend that basically did that strategy where every duty station he went to, he bought a house, and it's worked out really well for him.
Awesome.
But yeah, I mean, it's kind of a funny story, interesting from the standpoint of it kind of mirrors mine a little bit, so I assume you had a TSSCI clearance, and so it's like, so you can get your job wherever you need to, if you really need to. Mm-hmm. But that really, the conversation around real estate, where it was something like you never probably would have thought about it until you have this conversation with somebody who's really passionate about it, like you.
Yeah.
And I can totally relate to that. So at this point, you're in DC and you're buying your first house. Now, what is the catalyst that you're like, all right, I've had enough of the Intel world. I'm going to go ahead and get my real estate.
Oh, well, let me tell you, really within like the first 1 to 3 months of being at my contracting position, I was so over it. I had one of the worst leadership experiences I've ever had. It was just, I went from leading hundreds of troops and being responsible for a lot to almost like being talked down to, as if like, and I found that a lot in the contracting world, where, you're working with people who have only worked kind of like the contracting side and never been in the military, never been an operator or anything like that. Mm-hmm. And so they don't really like understand our experience or like what value we bring to the table. And it was almost like they were just like, no, like you have to kind of start over because you're prior military and you just don't understand how things work here. And everything was just so micromanaged. I mean, I would get chewed out because she was so detail oriented on like PowerPoint slides, and I'm not like a PowerPoint slide person. I'm more of a big picture, like strategic thinker. And that's just not my skill set, nor do I think it's the most important thing when we're talking about fighting wars.
Right. I feel like we don't need the graphics exactly 100% right.
Yeah. It's like just because this tab is indented too far compared, like, no. And so, yeah, it was like oil and water. And as I'm going through my home buying process and working with this manager, I was like, I can't do this. I gotta get out of here. So I reached back out to my friend Jason, who first got me thinking about real estate. And I was like, you know what? I think I'm like ready to start working on my licenses. And so he put me in touch with a lady at the KW Metro Center in Old Town Alexandria. And so I just started working on getting my Virginia license and started talking to her. And that was like back in, I think, like summer of 2018. And then I finally got my license in September of 2018. And that's when I started practicing. And I did it part-time for 2 years just to get it up and running and to a level that I felt comfortable jumping into it full time.
Yeah. I completely understand that. So when we come back, we're going to talk about those first couple years and then specifically the first year when you went full time. So we'll be right back with Brittany. Well, welcome back, everyone. So Brittany, let's talk about kind of, you had that part-time role where you are, and I think a lot of people are like that too, right? It's like, I don't have anything really to fall back on, so I don't want to just take the plunge wholeheartedly 100%. But you had to start getting to the point that you were feeling that you could take that. So what were you doing in those first couple of years where you were still part-time to produce business so that you could go full-time?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess when I started, I was just like, I don't know what I'm going to do to necessarily be successful in this business, but I knew I had a great platform with like Facebook and Instagram. I always just naturally who I am as a person, have always stayed in touch with people and maintain those connections, and am just a very relationship focused type person. I mean, that's how I found my job out here in DC. I got the boot from the military and it was pretty quick. And I was like, okay, I don't know what I'm going to do, but like, let me just start reaching out to people and old bosses and see where I can get. So I think like through my career in the military and also transitioning out, I have just like really realized the power of connection and networking. And so I know that's a very like relatable and translatable skill to real estate. So I knew, it's important to get the word out there that I'm an agent. And I think one of my first coaches, like she would always say, don't be a secret agent. Don't be a secret agent. If like nobody knows you're an agent, they're not going to use you. And so I didn't really like have like a lot of phone numbers because like, like as a millennial, you're adding people from work and stuff, and you may not like connect with them on the phone. But I was like, so I don't really have a database to just like start calling people and talking to them. And also that's a lot of time. And so I think I realized early on, like the power of social media. So I really just kind of started posting on social media and literally started with a headshot and wrote like a whole long thing about how I just got into real estate, kind of my experience with the home buying process and why I'm so excited to help, people have a better experience and have better representation and protection throughout. And within posting that, I had like my first client within a week.
I love that idea though. So you posted kind of like, this was my home buying experience and I want to help this improve for, not without slamming your agent or whatever, but just like this, I'm sharing, this was my first time buying a home. Here's where the things that I took from it. Here's what I will help my clients do differently. And I love the idea of kind of like sharing that aspect of it because, you're announcing that you're an agent and then sharing your personal story with it it's powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think people want to work with someone that they feel is relatable and that they can trust. So I think when you can get on people's level and share those personal struggles too, people gravitate towards you because of it.
Right. Now, and so you posted this. Now, what did you have a schedule of like, okay, I'm going Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday post? Or
no, I'm not that type of person. I'm better about it now. No, I didn't quite do it that way. But like any opportunity I had to post about real estate, I really like took it, whether it was like a funny meme or something, or, getting that first client and going on showings, making a post about showings and things to like look out for, on showings. And then when we got under contract and had an inspection, getting a graphic about inspections and why those are important, and just kind of using it as a tool to like bring up real estate in different ways, whether again it's to be funny or informative, or just to show that I'm doing business even though I'm a new agent.
Now, your first client that you had, so tell us, kind of walk me through that. So I make my post, this is my buying experience, and then somebody's like, hey, we're moving in a month, can you help us out?
Yeah, it actually ended up being a guy I worked with at Deloitte, and him and his wife knew me from working together, and we still worked in the same office when he was buying, and I was just like very humbled that he trusted me so much with such a big purchase, and he knew that they were my first transaction.
Yeah.
So incredibly grateful that they took a chance on me and trusted me. But I think it also helped that, we were in a professional work environment, and he knew me professionally, and he knew kind of my character and how I carry myself. So I think that helped too. And then from there, it just kind of snowballed. And
now, when you got that first one kind of in the office, did you end up helping others in the office as well, or was it kind of outside of that?
So I don't think anyone else in that office was necessarily looking to buy or anything, but I did end up, one of the government employees that I worked alongside with, she was like, oh, my ex-boyfriend is looking to buy, and he hasn't had a great experience with his agent. So I've told him he needs to interview you. And then I think he either became my second or third client just from that conversation.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely, spreading the word is definitely helpful. And it's always nice when somebody does give you that first opportunity, because you need the reps to do it. But
and also the confidence, because it's kind of scary. I remember working with that client, and they told me they found a house that they want to put an offer in on. And I hate to say this, but I hadn't learned anything yet. So I was at the KW office. I was so grateful that there were some agents hanging around late at night and could walk me through how to put together the contract and stuff. Cause I was what am I doing? And then I'm really grateful I joined KW for the training aspect and the coaching aspect, because then I could rely on my productivity coach to kind of help guide me through those first transactions. Yeah. And she was really helpful, especially on that first transaction, because the listing agent knew I was new, and I kind of felt like he was trying to bully me a little bit in negotiations, even though I'm not the type of person to back down, but it was still you're being good.
Yeah. Exactly. I can definitely understand.
It was helpful to have her there alongside me.
So if we have our 100 agents in front of us for a TED Talk, it sounds like the first thing we're going to go over is you really need to be posting on social, and just, it's always so important to be showing I am doing real estate now. So let me give you a scenario. You don't have that client right now, and it's been a month and you're in the business. What are, let's say, 5 things you would be doing right now you're posting on social about, hey, I'm a realtor, to let people know?
If I didn't have any business, I mean, I would be doing more than social media, but I guess a few things I would be doing is I'd be posting in Facebook every day, on my, not even Facebook, but my Facebook account, Instagram, LinkedIn. I don't use TikTok or YouTube as much, but if that's something you use and you're comfortable with, those are great platforms too. And you can post the same post across all those platforms, because you have different audiences. And I've gotten leads from Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn because of how consistently I post. So I think step one, I would be making sure that I'm posting once a day at a minimum.
Now, what would be a go-to for you is I'm going to post this content, a particular, I'm driving to this house, even if you're showing it to yourself, basically. What is that, something you would do? Or
I think my social media posts have kind of evolved. I've tried to establish myself as the expert in my market, and so that people can read my posts and know that I'm coming with a lot of information. So something like a monthly market update, really laying out what the market is doing and what we're seeing and kind of where we're seeing it heading. I try to do that once a month. Other things are, even if I don't have any showings, you can go schedule showings and you can take pictures in houses and make content around that.
Yeah.
You don't have to have a client with you. There's a certain illusion that I think business owners put on to, make them look like they're doing business, but there are things you can do when you don't have business to still show yourself doing real estate.
I think that's a great point and very important. So it's the content of like, hey, I'm going to go to this house. I'm going to take some pictures inside. I'm going to do a quick video. I could be having a lunch with a title company day. We're talking real estate. I'm going to this class. I'm doing whatever. So there's all this content out there, and I think a lot of times people. It's harder than it looks, I think would be the way that I would put it, as far as real estate and loan officer side as well, and getting clients. Sometimes it comes super easy and that's great, but we all have a period of time where it's not coming super easy. And so the newer agents out there listening, if it's been a month, you haven't got anybody yet, you just kind of got to go back to it and go, look, I'm going to give it my best shot. And if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. And I often feel too, almost everybody in the business needs to get lucky a little bit in the beginning. Right.
You do. And I'm not going to say that I was not lucky with what I did leading up to getting into real estate, the network I have and the connections I have. I don't know that I would have necessarily been as successful if it weren't for, that military network that I have and everything.
But it's still, you just need that one opportunity. So that one person saw the post that you made at the right time. Yep. And you certainly would have succeeded anyway, but it was a nice catalyst to kind of start the process. And so that goes back to the idea of you need to be posting every day, because you never know when that one person's going to take a look. So,
and one thing I want to say is, like, even if people are not liking your post, they are watching. I feel like in general, like I kind of have like the same groups of people liking my posts here and there. And then I'll have like a person reach out to me that I haven't seen in like 10 years. And they're like, hey, I'm reaching out because I'm looking to buy a house, and, your social media marketing is really working. And I'm like, really? You have never liked any of my posts. So that's good to know.
I 100% agree with that. It's be very interesting to know the percentage of watchers versus people that like it, because, we think of like the like is the validation of what we've done, but it's more so that the people are seeing it out there. And I think you're absolutely correct that people are they're going to see it more than they actually say that they do. That's just
right. So. I agree.
Now, we go back to the idea of the agents in front of us. And so it sounds like, we're making sure we're on the socials. Do you have some other tips, and kind of what would you be doing right now if you're like brand new and you're coaching yourself?
You have to get out and meet people. If you're not meeting new people every single day, you're not going to make it. You're going to lose business, and your business is slowly going to decline.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Is, you have to be putting yourself in front of people, whether it's these networking opportunities or kids soccer games, or you're part of the shuffleball league, or pickleball league, or whatever. Pickleball league, we'll go with that. But just
I think I put that I do shuffle dancing.
There you go. Something where you're in front of people on a regular basis to try to get that. And I've often felt some of the ideas that people have come up with where they create their own group. Like, if you find a group to be a part of, awesome, that's already formed and already like, hey, this has networking opportunities, but put together your own stuff too. You never know where that'll lead.
Exactly. And I mean, at least in the DC area, and the nice thing about social media there are so many local groups, and there are so many opportunities to find different things to do in whatever area you're living, and like get involved in your community and meet people and make those connections. And so that, I mean, even though I have this like huge military network, and I constantly have, people reaching out to me because they're moving in and out, I still make it a priority to go out and meet new people in the area and kind of widen my network and who I know.
Yeah, I think that's a great plan, and people should really follow up on that and do it as well. Now, when you kind of made that transition where you were doing the part-time to full-time, as you were going along part-time, what were some of I don't know, maybe the hurdles that you were overcoming, some of the different ways that what made you go, all right, I can do this now?
Yeah. So I guess like my first year, I think I did like 3 million in sales, like right off the bat. So basically like November to May of 2019, I like did a decent amount of business for a first-time agent, but I was part-time. And by the end of that, I felt incredibly burnt out. I was like so tired. I had no life because I was either working or doing real estate. And I honestly like took a step back, and I didn't know what real estate was going to be for me for a while. I didn't do a deal for a whole year.
Okay.
I had other stuff going on in my personal life that I was just like, I need to cut something out, and I'm just going to take a step back from this right now. And then 2020 came around, and I actually was like going to community college classes to go back to school for nursing because
oh wow,
I wasn't like sure what I wanted to do right then, and I wasn't sure that real estate was going to become something. But in my head, I was kind of thinking about going the nurse practitioner route and maybe like getting into opening a business and doing like aesthetics and injectables.
Okay.
So I like kind of had the mindset that I wanted to be a business owner and kind of work for myself, but I just wasn't sure that real estate was really going to take off, and I had kind of like put it on the back burner for a little bit. And then the pandemic came around, and one of my clients from the previous year had referred a guy to me, and we had talked in 2019 initially, but he was like a year out from buying. And then he just hit me up right when the pandemic started and was like, okay, I'm ready to buy my house now. And I was like, are you sure? Like everybody is backing off the market right now and not sure where this is going to go. Like, I just want to make sure you feel comfortable because we don't know where the market's going to go and we don't know what's going to happen. And he was like, no, I feel very confident in my job. I don't see it going anywhere. I want to be in this area long term. So it makes sense for me to buy it. And I think that was like a good lesson to myself, because I think sometimes like we can do a job of like talking our clients out of things because we think, you know, that it doesn't financially make sense right now. But like, I think the idea that like when it's the right time for you to buy, that's the right time. Like, don't try to time the market or whatnot, like buy when it's the right time for you. So that was like a good lesson, but pretty much like from there, my job at the Pentagon, they were like, contractors are not essential and you need to go home and take leave without pay and for the foreseeable future. And we don't know like when you're going to come back. So for 2 weeks, I was in limbo, like freaking out. I was calling my dad. I was like, do you think I need to sell my house? And he's like, calm down. And he was like, just calm down. Like, you'll be fine. Like, let's just see what happens. And I was like, okay. And then that's when that client reached out to me. So like, for that 2 weeks, I was just kind of doing real estate stuff. And I was like, well, this is kind of fun to be back into it and feel like I'm doing it full time. And then more people just started reaching out to me because I kind of got back into posting and everything. And so people were just like, oh, there she is again.
Yeah.
And I did like another like 3 or 4 million that year. And then basically in, I think like September, my coworker told me he was leaving to go work at another office. And I was just like, oh my gosh, you're leaving? I don't want to be here anymore. And I think I told myself like, I need to wait until like the spring of 21. But when he did that, it just like a light bulb went off. And I was like, you know what? There's never going to be like the right time to jump into it like full time, but you've set yourself up financially secure, like paid off all your debts and everything, besides like my mortgage. And I was like, I still will have my security clearance. You know, I can give it 6 months or whatever. And if it's really bad, like all my colleagues were like, please don't leave. Please don't leave. Like, you should come back. Like, don't leave us here without you. So I was like, well, you know, that's reassuring. I can always come back. Like, I don't need to feel like if I jump off that and it doesn't work out, that it's the end of the world. Like, I still have a backup. Yeah. And that mindset just got me more comfortable with jumping into it full time and quitting. And then it just really took off from there.
The rest is history. Yeah. I mean, it makes sense when you kind of go in that like full-time route and you had that moment where, and I can understand the burnout. If you're definitely working, 40 hours a week at a job, and then doing this on the weekends and the evenings, like that's a 90-hour work week.
Yeah, it was exhausting.
Yeah, so I can.
I'm glad to have one job now.
Right. So I think that the biggest takeaways that I would have for agents in this kind of, if we have our TED Talk situation, is one, you need to be posting on social on a regular basis, and in the beginning, looking for different ways you're going to start networking with people that the different groups that you can join, just finding groups of people that you can be a part of to let them know that you are a realtor. And that's the biggest thing. It sounds like it's just kind of getting out there and sharing the word that you're a real estate agent now.
Yeah, really.
So, all right. Well, when we come back, we're going to talk about kind of that evolution from first year or first couple of years part-time going full-time to then where you're at now. So we'll be right back with Brittany. All right. Well, welcome back, everyone. So Brittany, at this point, you're full-time COVID, and COVID during that time is just go, go, go. People are, lining up to buy houses and multiple offers and all that stuff. But one of the things that caught my eye about kind of your situation, your story, is you're not only licensed in Virginia, you also have Maryland and DC. So to walk us through a little bit of the evolution that took you to those states, because I would assume, and maybe and the District of Columbia, maybe I'm wrong, but were you originally like, I'm good, I just need Virginia, I'm good with Virginia, and did you just go, you know what, I'm going to get this one too?
No, I actually knew, like, when I got into real estate that I would get all three.
Okay.
Because when I was buying personally, I was looking in DC and Virginia, and I interviewed one other agent, and she was only licensed in Virginia, but she was like, well, my colleague can take care of you in DC. And I'm like, dude, I'm sorry, but I do not want to be working with two different people when I could just work with one person and it to be more streamlined. Like, that's just too chaotic for me. And just because of that, I just knew, like, I would eventually have all three. I started out with Virginia just because that's the state I live in. And then I slowly worked up to getting my Maryland, or I wouldn't even say slowly. I think I got my Maryland license like within the first 6 months or a year of having my Virginia license.
Was it easier or harder than you thought it'd be?
Well, so it's kind of weird because there's not like, so when you get licensed, you take the national test and the state test. So then when you go and get a second or third license, you only have to take the state test. But for Maryland, like, I could like not find really any study material for the test. So better or worse, I failed the first one. I was like, I didn't even know what I was answering.
All right.
And I think I like finally like found some like obscure like outline of like kind of the study materials and stuff, and somewhat studied. I took it again. I think I barely passed, but I passed that time because again, there was just like literally no study materials. I'm like, well, what am I doing here? So I got that license, and then it took me a little longer to get my DC license. I ended up getting that one like March of 21. So I think I had like 2 deals that I had to refer out to other agents. So that just kind of motivated me more to get my DC license sooner rather than later.
Now, was there, when you got, let's use Maryland, for example. So when you got your Maryland license, did you have a client that you were going to be working with in Maryland like right away, or was it a little bit of time? Kind of what was your process?
I can't like remember, honestly. I don't think I like necessarily had someone lined up right away. I think I'm trying to think back of when I like did my first Maryland deal, but it's been so long and so many transactions.
So finally it was like, oh good, I get to use this.
Yeah. I wouldn't say like I necessarily got it for a specific transaction. It was just, I'm starting to get more business, so it makes sense to just get the license and have it on the books.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, when you got, let's just use either Maryland or DC. So when you did your first deal in Maryland or DC after doing so many in Virginia, was it basically like riding a bike, or was there anything that kind of?
Oh, I hate the contract in Virginia, in Maryland and DC, like the Virginia contract.
Okay.
Like, thank you, whoever wrote that. It's so streamlined and straightforward, and then so few pages. And I guess for better or worse for buyers, it is a buyer beware state. So there's not all these disclosures that you have like in Maryland and DC. So definitely like the form stuff was a bit of an adjustment. I was like, I cannot stand how many addendums there are for the Maryland Association of Realtors contract.
I can imagine like your first couple, you sent the contract over and they were like, where's your 752 form? And you're like,
Oh
what
my
is
God,
the
I know.
752 or whatever? You're like,
And
oh,
there's
it's
like all
coming.
these
Just a
little
moment.
county disclosures.
Yeah. I'm like, oh my gosh. And it's funny. I often think, Virginia, the states I have, Virginia, it seems like it has a lot more pages than Florida, Texas, and
Oh, really?
Washington
Oh, that's
State.
interesting
So,
on the London
yeah.
side.
So when you're going DC and Maryland and you're going, my goodness, these are a lot of pages. And you pray for Virginia pages of the contract. That shows you how those are. So
I don't know, as like a person that just likes things to be more minimal and stuff, like just say what you need, stop repeating things over and over again, which I think like the Maryland contract is just very repetitive. I just really appreciate like the minimalist of the Virginia
approach to
contract.
Virginia. Yeah, that makes sense. Now, when you so let's talk about kind of the lead up of at this point in your careers, you're going and getting these other states. Is your marketing efforts shifting? Are you doing a lot of the same tactics? How are you staying in front of your past clients? How are you generating new clients?
Yeah, I mean, I guess staying in front of past clients and also just like friends. Again, kind of going back to what I said at the very beginning, I've always been the type of person to just naturally stay in touch with people. Like I'll regularly like text or call, or if I'm not friends with people on Facebook that I'm working with, I'll definitely add them after closing, if not before, if I feel like the relationship makes sense, but definitely adding them to social media so they're seeing my updates regularly. Doing things like newsletters and stuff like that, and just reaching out and having conversations with people and setting up things like grabbing coffee or dinner or drink to catch up, or maybe putting together like a little happy hour so I can connect with like a circle of friends where we have quite a few connections and stuff like that. But just really being mindful about staying in touch with people, and not just like texting or social media, but also like scheduling and doing an actual in-person meetup.
Gotcha. Now, when one of the things you mentioned, kind of like the newsletter. So, are you doing that? Is that digital? Do you go old school and send it out like paper style?
It's digital. I'm not doing paper.
And then, okay, so I think the big thing, what I'm really hearing though, is that so after you've closed, it's not just like, oh, I'm not going to see these people for 3, 5, 7 ever years. Mm-hmm. It's you're really trying to put out the effort to meet up with them again, to go to dinner, to do whatever. And I think that's important, especially for your clients that can be rainmakers, for lack of a better way to put it. So I assume, do you have kind of your clients that are really taking care of you? Is there anything
I have
special that you do for them?
I have amazing network, and I like joke that like I've trained my friends well, because I'll get people reaching out from like military groups and they're like, oh yeah, you got shouted out a few times, so wanted to reach out. And I just like I'm always trying to thank people that are, because it doesn't necessarily have to be a referral, right? Just trying to always thank the people that are supporting me and love on them, and maybe send them Starbucks gift card or Amazon gift card, or maybe like some Melissa cupcakes to say thank you when they do things like that. Because people, the majority of people are not business owners, and they don't think about lead generation on a regular basis. And I don't want to say like you have to train them, but I think it's important to recognize when they do that stuff so that they get excited about it and want to do it more, because they're like, ooh, what will like Brittany send me next or whatnot?
Right. Yeah, I think that's a great point though, because you're really right. They don't think about this all the time like we do, and so you really need to acknowledge the people that do. Here's a question for you. So can you give me 3 non-negotiables that you do per week right now as part of your business that I'm doing these 3 things all the time, every week, year in and year out, to really keep your production where it's at?
Yeah. I would say regularly posting on Facebook, maybe not every day, but definitely multiple times per week.
Mm-hmm.
I would say every day I'm reaching out to people and I'm booking out my calendar to do social things and meet up with people. And then I think like kind of something I started last year or like a year and a half ago was I started a local Facebook group. And so I've been kind of nurturing and fostering that community and started a newsletter in there. So like people kind of can see like things to do around the area, and been very diligent about putting together at least one happy hour a month. Sometimes we'll like put together other activities and stuff, but definitely putting together one happy hour a month and kind of coordinating that throughout the month and getting that together and going to those and
It's smart. Now, tell me about this Facebook group, though. So, because I've often been kind of curious about this idea. So, tell me about like your local Facebook group that you've created personally.
Yeah. So, I guess like before the pandemic, I was in this local Facebook group that had like 25,000 people. And when the pandemic hit, they kind of relaxed on the rules a lot to kind of make it like more fun and people could connect and just kind of banter back and forth. And so my presence in that group really blew up, and I actually started to get clients from that group. And I think people think, oh, if people are like posting, for realtor recommendations and Facebook groups, that if I just like post about my stuff, people will come to me. But the real challenge is you have to actually build relationships in those groups, because people need to know that they can trust you. And so I was really diligent about that in that Facebook group, and going out to meetups. And so from that Facebook group, I mean, I've had over 10, 20 clients come from that.
Wow.
And then it's just snowballed from there that, people from that group have sent me stuff. I mean, I've made a friend group in that group of like 5 or 6 people, and we hang out regularly. Like we are in a cornhole league, the spring, summer, and fall. We have game nights and stuff. And some of them have been some of my biggest cheerleaders in those groups and help get me some of those connections and leads from those groups. And then last year, the guy who made the Facebook group, he was moving to Baltimore and announced he was going to shut it down and didn't really want to pass it on to anybody. And the whole group like freaked out.
No.
And then he was like, well, I'll let like people advertise their group in here before I shut it down if they want to create a new group. And I was like, you know what? F it. I'm going to create a group, because, I really value like what that has brought to my life. Like not just business wise, but just like personal relationship wise. Like I really made like a solid set of friends from there. Especially when I kind of felt like I was in a period of my life where a lot of my friends were not only getting married, but starting to have kids. And I'm not married. I don't have kids, and I don't really foresee myself having kids. And so I kind of felt disconnected from my friends, and kind of almost not like an identity crisis, but it's just like, okay, like our paths are going very different directions, and I don't feel like I have friends going in my direction. And so making that friend group was really helpful to kind of get over that identity crisis, I feel like. And I really value that. I wanted to still have that, but I also wanted other people to have like the opportunity to have those type of connections, because I mean, being an adult can be lonely and it can be hard to make friends. So I think it's important to have those types of things. And so I was like, okay, I'll just create a group, advertised it in the group. We're not as big, but we have like 1,500 plus people in the group. And when we go and do our happy hours, we have like 20 to 30 people showing up, and everybody's having a great time. Really gotten to know some people a lot better that like were from that group, or new people in my group. And it's just been fun to be able to kind of create that environment for other people too.
That's awesome. I love that you took that initiative and made it, and I'm sure get business from that group too organically, and it's just super smart. So you gave us some great tips on the non-negotiables that you do. Kind of anything in your business that Well, here's a good idea or a good question for you. So a lot of it is right now for you is organic and growing through the people you know, the resources that you have. Is there any platforms out there or any tools that you're using right now that you don't think like the majority of agents know about that you're really passionate about now, or anything that you've come across? You're like, oh my gosh, you got to be using this.
Not really.
Okay. All the widgets are the same. Okay.
I don't think there's like I don't think there's like any secret ingredient to real estate. And I think that especially when you start getting in these like real estate group forums and stuff, there's a lot of people that are just trying to sell you things and trying to make money off of you. And there can be like a lot of noise around you. And I think it's just important to kind of like focus on what you're good at and what you know you can stick with to bring leads in. So like I'm not gonna like put it out there that like relationship building and social media is like for everybody. You know, there's agents that are more transactional or use Zillow to buy leads and stuff like that. And if that works for you, if that is like what brings you in business, like that's great. Focus on what brings you in business and is successful for you. But for me, cold calling and connecting with Zillow leads where I don't know them, like that's just not my jam. Or like going to open houses and trying to build rapport with a stranger. I've never been great at that. So
Yeah.
I stick to the things I know and what works well for me. And again, I think that kind of goes back to that first productivity coach that I had. She also kind of said in the beginning, you know, whatever lead generation works for you, just as long as you have something, like do that. Don't try to do all this other stuff or do a million things, because there's so many different things you can do to bring in business and be successful in real estate. You just gotta, I think, listen to your instincts and be true to yourself.
Find your niche. Yeah, makes sense. All right, when we come back, we're going to go over some good stories. Be right back with Brittany. Well, welcome back, everyone. So, Brittany, we're going to go over some great stories. And let me start off, though, with your best piece of advice that you have gotten. It doesn't have to be real estate, but could have got it yesterday, could have got it years ago. What's kind of the best piece of advice that you kind of live by?
I think kind of like the best piece of advice, or like something I try to live by. I'm very much a high D type A type of person, very perfectionist driven. And I just think like, especially in real estate, like the desire to like have things so perfect with like whatever marketing campaign or whatever can be really high, and it can hold you back and prevent you from actually putting out the stuff. So I think it's a good balance of like getting things almost perfect, but like good enough, and just running with it, because you'll never like have the perfect time to set up this like beautiful social media account. Like I'm not posting stuff that is like perfectly aesthetically curated or anything, but it's doing the job and it's bringing in business. So I think like letting go of perfection has been really key for me.
Nice. I like that one. Okay. Personal motto that you roll by.
Personal motto. I don't know that I really have a personal motto, but I guess like consistency is key. I think you can do anything you want and be good at anything if you're consistent with it.
I couldn't agree with that one more. I mean, that's such a big part of real estate and lending or anything in sales, where you have to be seen by people, and you know, you can watch your production just typically just fall off a cliff if you get out of doing what you had been doing. It's a slow, thing, but then you'll turn around.
And I know when I have my slow times, it's because I'm taking a break or whatever. And that's fine. You like need those breaks, but I think it's good to keep in mind that like the stuff you're doing now, you're not going to see that come to fruition for probably at least 90 days. Yeah. So, you have to take breaks. You can't get burned out, or you won't perform and you won't be passionate about it. And, it'll let slip like how you're handling your clients and stuff. So you got to be at the top of your game and take breaks. But I think really keeping in mind, getting back into it and staying consistent over the long haul is what's important.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And you definitely got to get away from it every so often.
Oh yeah.
If you don't, you will go a little crazy. You don't want to snap at an appraiser, that's not good.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. When I can tell, like I'm getting just over it. Like I'm talking to a listing agent and they're like, I can't share details. And I'm like, yes, you can.
I demand answers right now.
I demand, and then I'm like, okay, you're getting a little pissy. Maybe you need to go on a vacation.
I'll be back. Hold on. I'll call you next week.
Right?
All right. So here's one for you. So bold move that you have made to get a transaction, meet a client, anything like that. So basically the bold move idea is like, if you had not done this activity or you would not have gotten that client. So you have a good bold move for us.
I don't know. I guess like I wouldn't really consider any of my moves bold, but I guess one of them that like really sticks out in my mind is I went to a Christmas party at the beginning, and one of my friends was like, oh, my friend, is looking to buy a house. So like we started talking, and I could kind of tell he was kind of flirting with me. I wasn't feeling that type of relationship, but was definitely interested in helping him buy a house. And then so like we exchanged numbers and stuff, and then we were like talking about meeting up, and I thought we were talking about meeting up to discuss buying a house. And the more he was like laying it on, I was like, this sounds like a date. And so of course, like that's uncomfortable to like have that conversation with someone, but yeah. I think I handled it professionally and just said, and I think at the time even I was like dating someone, so it wouldn't know. So I think I like could use that, but I just like politely told him like, oh, like I'm dating someone. I'm really not interested in dating, but I would still love to help you and be your realtor if you're still interested. And he handled it well and still wanted to work with me. So awesome. I was happy that worked out and that we could kind of maintain that professional relationship.
That's smart. So it was a bold move, basically. Of all right, I could quote unquote lead this guy on for.
Oh yeah, that wouldn't have been nice.
But instead, let me just be upfront and like, okay,
yeah.
If you don't want to work with me anymore, that's fine. But let me lay it out. And so that is a bold move, and it shows character that you did it, obviously. So
yeah.
Okay, so this one is the last question for you, and it's my best story question. So. You've been showing tons of houses. You've sold in DC and Maryland and of course Virginia, buying and selling. Now this story is the one that in 30 years from now you're sitting on a beach and somebody asks you for your best real estate story. It can be weird, it can be funny, it can be just scary, whatever you got. What is your best real estate story so far?
Oh man, I guess I like have a few, but the one that kind of stands out is from last year. I was looking at homes in Vienna with a client that was referred to me by a friend and stuff, and we had good rapport and stuff. And so we're like looking through this house, and we go down in the basement and go into like the unfinished part. Okay. And it was just like, I just like, like the delayed reaction of like realizing what you're seeing, but you're screaming and running away. So there was this like big spider, like a wolf spider. So like just very long leg span. And was like in the middle of the room. And I just like screamed and ran out. And then my client was screaming too, because she didn't know why I was.
Why are we screaming?
Oh my God, that was so embarrassing.
So was it like a spider web in it that you could have almost walked in?
No, it was on the ground. So I was like, I'm not out. She was like kind of like poking around the room. I was like, that's all you, girl. I'm not.
Yeah, I'll be up here. Yeah. No, I don't play around with spiders. I'm not a fan of them. So I completely would have been running like right with you. So that's a good story. I mean, you come across stuff all the time that you it's just part of the life. And I don't feel like they do a good enough job presenting that in the real estate stories. Like that's what they should do. That's the next real estate show. It should be like, best stories of realtors, and that could just be like enactments of
right.
Like the spider would have been like the size of a dog on the TV, right? It's like I come around the corner and it's like, holy cow.
There was one time actually, again in Vienna, went to a house with a client and we go to the basement and it's like just like kind of a weird basement layout. I'm going room to room, and then like this last room is just like kind of tucked in and no windows or anything, and it had like a steel table, almost like where you would put a dead body.
Oh boy. Okay. For the
viewing, it looked like a mortuary or something in that back room, and we're like just kind of standing at the little table thing that's built into the floor and just looking at each other, and we're like, this is so weird. And I was like, this kind of reminds me of like Dexter. And he's like, yeah. He's like, we should leave. I was like,
Right. Let's
I was
go.
like, something weird has happened in here and I don't want to be a part
No, that's like, I mean, it's part of the job, and it's the part that needs to be on TV. That'd get good ratings. So anyway, well, Brittany, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the podcast today. Congratulations on all your success. It's been a pleasure chatting with you, and I can't wait to see where it goes from here.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me.